Morning, everyone. I'm Patty. This is Patty.
Morning.
Good.
Cold.
It's cold but sunny, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
It's perfect for me. Cool. Thanks so much for joining. Morning. This morning session is all about consistent guarantee of consistent reporting and accurate reporting in Streamtime. So it's a bit of a setup session, and it's really useful for people who are just joining Streamtime family, or looking at the setup and see how they can improve their reporting, for example. So it works for both.
Yeah, it can even be good for existing users just to reassure you guys that everything's set up correctly. Maybe it's a while since you did set up, so you might want to double check a few things. Maybe you dive straight in and didn't necessarily follow a couple of the steps or tips that we might point out today. So you might find it useful.
It's a new financial year, so it's time to set yourself up for success for a new financial year.
Exactly. Cool. Some housekeeping?
Yeah, sure. So feel free to introduce yourself, say hi, where you work, what you do. If you have questions along the way, just feel free to just on the side here. We will answer them at the end. That's it.
Yeah. So what are we going to go through today, Polly? What are the areas that we're gonna to make sure that people can report consistently and accurately?
Yeah, we will look at the profile and settings area to start with, and then we'll look at creating jobs using the right labels, maybe template jobs as well, and see how it will ensure the consistency in those. Setup is not the most fun part of Streamtime, but it's actually quite essential, because once you're on the right setup, it will guarantee Streamtime and guarantee those consistent and accurate reporting in the future. It's important to spend some time in profile and settings and look at your items, look at the labels that you're using, look at those expenses and the team cost rates, and revisit them again to do that consistent reporting in the future. We only produce valuable insights if you obviously use Streamtime and track time more, but obviously you need to look after that data that you put in, because we won't be able to produce those valuable insights otherwise.
Yeah, what we'll do today will help you keep all of that information clean to give you nicer reports, decluttering, I suppose, making things a bit more streamlined and looking at how you can do that from the back. So I'm going to open up my screen.
Cool. Don't be shy, guys. No one's saying hi today.
Feel free to say hello.
It's cold morning. We're still waking up.
Cool. Cool. All right, so here we are. The first thing that we're going to take a look at is our items and expenses.
Yep. In profile and settings?
In our profile and settings, yeah. So the items and expenses that we can set up here are pretty much the bones of what our jobs will be. Essentially, when you're building a job, you can add an item, you can create a brand new item on a job. You can use them just on those specific jobs. But you also have the option to pick an item from this list. This is kind of like a master list. And what that allows you to do is set up a set of items that you might use consistently across a number of projects, add a description, add a sell rate. And if you do use Xero or MYOB or QuickBooks, at this point, you can also link those with the relevant revenue or expense accounts. Cool. So really easy to set these up. We can see a few here, and these are just our services. These are the things that we sell. We've got our design work. How much do we sell that at an hourly rate?
Yep.
Pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory.
It's important to stay consistent on using those items and expenses, because as Patty said, when you do create a new job, you're actually able to create a new item, but those items don't get saved anyway, but the time will be tracked against them. It's important that you as a team agree on the amount of items that you use, your services, so you can, when it comes to creating a job, you pick from the ones you've got on your master list, so you can then report on them correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And same goes for our expenses. So we've got a few expenses here. These might be things that we use consistently across projects. And again, just by setting them up here in this list, meaning that we can select them, just allows us to then report on them consistently. For example, maybe Kate is a freelance designer that we use quite frequently. And so we can add Kate in here as an expense. She's kind of like a third-party cost in this instance. So maybe at the end of the year, we will want to review how much we spent on Kate and how much profit Kate brought us. And by setting her up as an expense here means that we can consistently use the same expense to track Kate's work and then see exactly how much time we did spend with her over the last year. So that's all because we've got her set up here. The only reason we're doing this is because if we're going through instances where we're individually adding Kate as an expense on different jobs, it's possible that we'll confuse the name or maybe mistype the name, or there are some imperfections that could happen in that process.
It happens all the time, so ensure that it doesn't happen again. It's a good way.
Yeah, exactly.
It also saves you a lot of time when you're creating a new job. So you already have Kate as Kate's cost and sell rates. What to do is just add hours.
Exactly. The next thing we're going to take a look at is our team's setup. So our team's cost and sell rates. And the reason we want to take a look at these is because by default, obviously, we won't have these set up when we add our team members into Streamtime. But cost rates especially are really important because when a team member tracks time, we need to know how much that hour cost, and we need to add that in here. And the reason we need that is because that's how we calculate profit in Streamtime. So we're going to use those two figures and the difference between those, that cost and that sell rate, to determine the profit on an hour, for example. So how do you make up a cost? What do we suggest?
Great question. I was just about to suggest the same. So the cost rate consists of teams' salaries, individual salaries, overheads within your company, divided by the number of employees, obviously. And we recommend to add a bit of profit in there as well, just in case. So to kind of, it's a safety blanket for you. If something goes wrong, and I hope nothing goes wrong, but if something goes wrong, you still make some money out of it.
Yeah, exactly. You always want that. We want that cost rate to be showing a bit greater than it truly is.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is so that if that cost rate is looking okay in Streamtime, then it'll be even better when it hits the bank. So we want that cost rate to be a little bit inflated, just to give us a bit of room to wiggle, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so you can add a cost rate. You can restrict your team not to see that cost rates too. So it's not a problem. Only you as a subscriber or managing director, finance department, you can only see the cost rates. None of your team needs to see it. So you can just restrict their views on that. So it's pretty easy.
Exactly. What we're going to do now is go through a process of setting up a template job. And some of you may find template jobs useful. If you do have jobs that follow a similar structure across time, then that could be really useful. Otherwise, it might just be a good exercise to see how you can kind of go through that, how we'd recommend doing it. But then we'll track some time against that job so that you can see how you can get those jobs looking consistent and making sure nothing's really slipping through the cracks each time. So let's create a new job. This is going to be a brand strategy job, and this is just the template. So we'll leave this one as Streamtime at the moment. It's an internal job because we will actually archive this. And different brand strategy jobs change based on budget and scope. So we're not actually going to plan any figures on here, although we could. We're rather just going to add all of the items that we need to add to this job. So Discover goes out at about $200 an hour.
Cool.
Maybe there'll be some concept development.
Bit of
maybe design.
A little bit of design, yeah. So you can even go ahead and plan out your team and add the team into those items too. So you can, if you have your team consistently working on that that job, when you duplicate it, your team will be already stored there, so you don't have to add them in one more time. Maybe a certain design team works on that brand strategy every month. So instead of doing it every time you duplicate a job, might as well just do it straight away.
The first time, exactly. For example, in this instance, I've added Polly and Michael to the design item. They might be our designers. It's obvious that they're going to be working on that regardless of the job. I'm going to add template as a label here.
Yeah.
I'm also going to add branding as a label. Setting that one up now so that I can bring those across when I duplicate this job. Again, not really needing to do much here. Perhaps I will. If you need, you could also add an expense to this job as well. Probably don't need to at this point, but if your template jobs do have expenses attached to them, I've certainly talked to customers where there are those instances. That's a good idea too. But what we're going to do is archive this job. So locking it down means that it will be taken off our WIP list and we can identify it quickly as a template using that label. And what we're going to do is actually now duplicate this job. So we're going to use this template to create a brand new job. Brand strategy.
Actual job, yeah.
Exactly. So this one's come in. We're doing a brand strategy job for
Lululemon.
Lululemon. Is it 2 words or
I think it's 1 word.
1 word? So
Yeah.
Lululemon.
Yes, it is.
Someone who works on the brand strategy. I should probably know that.
And here, when Patty is duplicating a job, you're actually able to choose what you like to duplicate. And right now, we haven't done anything on that template apart from adding those items, maybe some theme and labels. We do want to duplicate a label because we've added a branding label into that job, so we want to know what type of job this is. And obviously, template label can be removed
really easily. I'd rather bring across the label and remove the template than have to remember the labels that were on it previously. I find that a bit easier, but that's up to you. This is all we need at the moment. We didn't have any quotes, invoices, POs, expenses, but for example, if you do have a retainer template set up, for example, you might already have those quotes and invoices on there, even any expenses. So those are great instances where they could be useful too. Create and plan. We've got our new job ready to go here. Everything's in pause. Members brought to. So what we'll do is we'll maybe plan out some of this discover work. The discover here.
Put it in.
I'm going to put it in maybe Monday, and this is going to take us up 3 weeks.
You have a few team members.
Andy, myself, and
Okay.
cool.
I would love to work for Lululemon.
Sounds good. Cool.
And let's see the template label as well.
Oh, good. Good thing. Awesome. Now, what we can do is track some time against this. What I might do is this Lululemon project. I can see I'm assigned to discover, and let's say I want to create this task. Pull it up. Maybe I spent about 4 hours today working on it, and I know I'm going to spend some time tomorrow. Maybe I even did a few hours yesterday. So I'm just duplicating those there to get across, and I'm going to track some of that time too.
Awesome. Cool. So you know as well, Patty just manually entered that to-do for himself, but those items, to-dos live on the right-hand side and the item sidebar as well. So the item sidebar shows everything that Patty's assigned to, not just that job, but multiple jobs, all sorted by the due date.
Exactly.
So you can
and I
find that here.
Find that one there. I can see it's due in 3 weeks. I can see that there's now 46 hours remaining to be worked on it.
Because we've tracked some time.
Yeah. And I can also see that there are 3 people working on those 46 hours.
Yeah.
So if Paulina or Andy were to track some time, that 46 hours is going to get deducted further, which is cool.
Super cool.
Heading back to the job. Cool.
Awesome.
I can see that time's being tracked here under Discover.
Perfect.
Might even be a good idea to, perhaps start getting on this concept development too. We'll track a few different items here just so we can kind of see across the project where things are going. And I might create this one for you, Polly.
Sure. We can even log time from the job.
Yeah,
page as well.
it's
Might
great.
be easy.
Or I might not need to jump all the way back to the to-do screen, and this might be Polly, you who's doing this.
Yep.
Let's say, yeah, you spent how long?
5 hours.
5 hours doing concept development today, or maybe you did it yesterday. Let's say.
Yep.
We can log this one directly from here too. So without even having to leave our job screen, we can get that time tracked and logged in the system.
Pretty
Really easy.
handy.
Cool. So now we've got some information in there. We might want to take a look at an example of a report where we can see how this information is pulling through. And what we're going to take note of is the fact that it is going to be really streamlined based on how we've set up this job. So what we're currently interested in looking at is
Time report.
the time. Cool. Already I've got this one grouped by item name.
Yeah, it's important. So if you do want to report on actually what's happened in the studio for this within a certain period of time, or you're looking at specific job and what happened within that job, grouping by an item name will allow you to understand what has happened, what item has been worked on the most, for example.
Exactly.
Just a different view for you to analyze this.
Exactly. And I can see a whole bunch of different items here. It's not necessarily super clean, but if you do start to use a more structured item setup and job structure like we've just done, then you're going to notice that this will look a lot cleaner. And I'm going to use some filters here to start getting this looking good. The first one I want to do is look at branding. And then the next one, so I've added a job label filter for all of our branding jobs. I also want to look at these filters. I also want to look at this for a particular client. So this brand strategy job that we're working on, maybe it's part of a bigger project that's going over a couple of years. Maybe we've worked with these guys before and there are several jobs. And maybe we want to kind of retrospectively look at all of the time spent across those jobs and the different areas.
It's a big client, so we want to understand what has happened.
Yeah, or perhaps even more specifically, we wanted to look at a team member. So let's say I wanted to look at where Holly spent her time. Cool. Spent just on concept development. And again, kind of just reiterating that because we've gone back and set up concept development in the items area and selected it, means that we're not going to have 3 different versions of a type of concept development, or if you call it concepts on one job, concept development on another, even make the odd typo. By setting that up and selecting it from the back end means that it's going to be consistently using the same name here. And that's really the most important thing.
Exactly. And I could see that the cost and sell rates are there as well. And it's important to understand, obviously, your sell rate needs to be much higher than the cost rate in order to make some profit. So adding a cost rate is, we all hope so. But we never know.
If that's not the case, then I would rethink.
You guys should call us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But it's important that your cost rates are consistent, sell rates are there, so you can understand how much profit are you making from this time slot.
Exactly, yeah. And if it is the case where you haven't actually entered in those cost rates since you've set up, maybe you dived right into Streamtime and you forgot to add those cost rates in against your team members, so they're currently showing you $0. It's no worry because the first time that you enter a cost rate, we'll actually backfill all cost entries with that rate. So for example, if I've been using Streamtime for 3 months and I have $0 cost rate against my name, but I've tracked, 600 hours worth of time, for example, adding in a cost rate 3 months down the track will automatically go and update my cost rate for those 600 hours tracked. So it's not too late and you can still get that valuable information about your business, but you want to make sure you've got the right cost rates set up there. And yeah, Polly's already explained how we calculate that.
Yeah, cool. And I want to talk about something else. Sometimes, but sorry, it's not by plan.
No, you're going to throw me under the bus here?
No. Sometimes when your team might track time against their job, something doesn't go by plan, and maybe they didn't choose an actual item and track time against the right job, which is well done. Let's go into my to-do screen, for example, or your to-do screen. Yeah. And maybe we had a client from Lululemon called and they wanted to discuss something, but we didn't even have time to choose an item. We just want to log this time, call with client, call with Rachel, perfect, today. And we're going to log this time. And perhaps it will still look like the time has been tracked within the job. However, it will look like an extra time tracked. So it means it hasn't been planned, but if this call actually related to concept development, for example, you can easily move this time tracked into the right item. So then it will ensure the consistent reporting for you in the future too. So how would we do that, Patty?
Yeah, so exactly. So essentially, because I haven't attached it to an item,
and that's
it doesn't
okay.
have a place to live.
Mm.
But I could look at this perhaps by item name, and I've just opened up our breakdown of time tracked by clicking on the used planned figures at the top here. You get this breakdown, and I can see my extra hours tracked. And as Polly said, I do want to kind of classify this underneath another item so we can look at it. And to be honest, it's not to say you have to. Maybe you do want to capture that time that was out of scope.
Yeah, maybe.
Those extra hours tracked are a great way to do that and report on them separately. But you could send this one or move this to an item just by editing that task, opening it up and selecting the item here. So that was concept development. So we're going to save that one now. And I can see that it's been filed underneath concept development, keeping everything clean. So
exactly.
If time does get tracked in the wrong place, it's not the end of the world. You can edit those and move them around. Cool.
Cool.
So I think that kind of gets to the end of everything we wanted to show you in terms of what you can do to set these things up. Maybe one further thing worth mentioning is setting up favorites, because when it comes to reporting, using favorites based on filters that you guys use regularly is really important. So when we are reporting, we're using filters here to refine these lists that we can see, and then we can save those down as favorites. Now, for example, maybe I do want to create a time report of the report that we looked at before, which was all of our branding work for Lululemon. And I might include archived jobs in here too, so just including all those filters. So maybe time by item, Lululemon branding. I can save that, and it means that I can come back to this one with a single click. And there, another thing just to keep in mind is that we are using the job label. So if you do apply a bit of thought to the labels that you're using in the system and use them consistently, you can kind of get all sorts of outcomes when you apply different labels to different jobs based on the type of job. Maybe they're an account manager label. Maybe the label is related to a status of the job.
Or a big project.
Or a big project. These kinds of things. So there are all sorts of different ways to use labels, which you can think of, and then applying reporting.
Yes, 100%. It's also important to stay consistent using those labels too, and perhaps agree as a team on the labels that you will be using, as it's really easy to create a new label if there is a little bit of a typo or just an extra letter creates a brand new label, which we don't want, because those labels will appear and then they will mess up your reporting, or they won't include something on an essential report.
Exactly. But we do help you by this, by giving you a list of your labels that you can select from when you start typing. So if I know there's a branding label, I can start typing the word branding and then just select that one from a list to add it to a job. So getting in the habit of using that selection process is a great way to make sure that you're using those correctly, and just selecting them from lists as opposed to creating new ones each time. Cool. So we'll open up to any questions. I can see there's a couple in there already.
That's good.
So do you want to read that first one out? I can't actually see all the way through.
Lynn is asking, can you also view time by team member and departments? Great question. So we are going into jobs and we're going to time, and we can group this view by a team member. So that to answer your question, Lynn, you can even find a specific team member as well, and so set those dates when the time has been tracked, so to view what has happened with that team member
last week,
in a specific time.
And to further that, in terms of the departments, this is also really easy to set up, because what you can do is find the team members in a certain department and then add them all to the report and save it as a favorite. So for example, in this instance, maybe it's myself and Sarah in our design team. I can say Patty and Sarah. So I've just added a team member filter there, including those two. You can use that plus button at the bottom to add multiple filters for that particular type. And I can save this as a favorite. So I can say design team time last week. Ooh. Save that one down. And you can do that for all your different teams so that you can easily come back with a single click and find them. It's just going to be in my favorite list.
Exactly. Another question from Susie. Hi, Susie. Do you guys have a list of items you could share with us to help get the basic ones?
So items, when it comes to items, Susie, they're essentially, there aren't any items that are correct or incorrect to use. They're essentially the line items that you'll use on a job or on a quote. They're essentially the services that you offer. So that's entirely up to you to decide. These are very typical ones that we see across jobs. Depends on how you'd like to organize your time as well, by the different types of work and how you're budgeting for that. So the ones you can see here are just some examples based on what we've seen, but it also depends on exactly the work you guys are doing and the services you offer, how you're pricing that and charging for it. So there's no right or wrong answer there.
Exactly.
It's entirely up to you. But yeah.
Lynn has another question. Is it also able to see if it's billable or non-billable? Great question, Lynn. If I have a non-billable job, what I would do first thing is I would add a label non-billable job into that job. So then I can filter this non-billable job out of my actual reports, WIP reports. So it's important to use that label.
You can see that one already here. We've used that one before.
Perfect.
So job label is not non-billable.
Perfect. And when it comes to reporting on time for billable or non-billable jobs, it's easy to just choose that label. Job label is non-billable. So this shows us time that's been tracked for non-billable jobs within a period of time. If you swap it, job label is not non-billable, will show you all the time that's been tracked for actual work.
Exactly. And again, this one is a really good example of how you can use labels to get that consistent reporting and ensuring you've got that cost set up, because what this report's showing us is how much that non-billable time cost us, and how much it was potentially sold for as well. And especially if you do have different types of internal or non-billable work, for example, admin, business development, these kinds of, making sure that they're consistently set up in the back end in your items and expenses area means by these here too, and we can see annual leave is another one there. So there are a couple of different options there that it all comes from the same place. So the principles that we've talked about today will certainly help you get the reports.
Exactly. Lee, to answer your question, the last question, you won't be able to see it on one report because you might have non-billable to billable jobs, and you might have to create two reports and compare that information. But I would be keen to understand what is it that you're trying to achieve. How are you currently comparing those non-billable and billable jobs? Yeah, maybe let's chat later.
Yeah, and we can prepare all this for you, Lynn. Export them to a CSV. If you do want to do a data dump, merge those reports together, and do whatever you like with the data. That's entirely up to you. So it's easy. We also have a public API as well. So if you do want to develop a tool for that API or use it elsewhere, you certainly can hook up with that.
Yeah.
It's in our integrations area, which is in our profile and settings. Integrations down the bottom, you've got your key there and some documentation on how you can use that API. But that's towards the end of 30 minutes. If there are no more questions, then it might be time to wrap things up.
I think it's perfect time to wrap things up.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paul. Bye.